This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. Now, normally I do a birthday boy on someone who is still living and talk about their lives as is, but of course, also any birthday boy I did for March 31st can't be repeated twice. So I found this guy. He's a legendary boxer, the first black world heavyweight boxing champion, and of course, he caused a lot of controversy. Of course, the controversies are different nowadays instead of the 20th century into the 21st century. But his name is Jack Johnson. He was born March 31st, 1878, the third of 9 children born to his parents. His father was a civilian teamster of the Union's 38th Colored Infantry, and Jack would call him the most perfect physical specimen he had ever seen. Although Henry had a trophy, his father had a trophied right leg from his service in the Civil War. He attended school in Galveston, Texas for 5 years and was frail and was expected to work. Anyway, even though that he grew up in the South and the segregation and all that, he said that it was not much of an issue because everyone in the 12th Ward were poor, white or black. Yeah. Anyway, Jack Johnson said that the white boys were my friends and pals. I ate with them, played with them, and slept at their homes. So anyway, Jack Johnson quit school and would work at the local docks. He would try to find work, other jobs around town. So anyway, he would do all that. By 16, he actually moved to New York City and found living arrangements with Barbados Joe Walcott, who was a great welterweight fighter from, well, the Barbados. He would find work exercising horses for the local state, well, until he was fired for exhausting a horse. On his return to Galveston, he was hired as a janitor at a gym owned by a heavyweight fighter. He saved enough money to buy boxing gloves, sparring every chance he got. So, anyway, Jack Johnson would make his professional debut as a boxer November 1st, 1898, in Galveston, knocking down Charlie Brooks. In his third pro fight, he would face the Black Hercules, as they call him, Klondike John Haynes. And Klondike won on a TKO in the 5th round. Anyway, Jack Johnson tried everything. He would fight the legendary Joe Shanowski in Galveston, being knocked out in the 3rd round. Prize fighting was illegal in Texas at the time, and they were both arrested. Bail was set at $5,000, which at the time was akin to $200K in 2023. Neither could afford it. The fighters could go at home as long as they agreed to spar in the jail cell. Anyway, they would remain friends and all that. Then Jack Johnson became I think by 1903 he beat Denver Ed Martin for the world color heavyweight belt. He would defend the colored belt 12 times, which is second most all time, and all that. Regardless, Johnson would fight Joe Jeanette a total of 7 times, winning 4 times and drawing twice. Anyway, so he would have lots of fights. Jack Johnson would fight Joe Jeanette in 1945 in a exhibition to sell war bonds. Even though Jack Johnson was 67 and Jeanette was 66. Anyway, Jack Johnson would finally win the World Heavyweight belt December 26, 1908 on Boxing Day against Tommy Burns of Canada at the Sydney Stadium in Australia. Tommy Burns agreed to fight Johnson only on the premise that he was guaranteed $30,000, which was no short small change back in those days. Anyway, 20,000 people saw the fight and saw Jack Johnson brutalize Tommy Burns so much that the police had to step in to stop the fight after 14 rounds. So anyway, Jack Johnson lost the colored heavyweight belt because, well, I mean, you know, he was the real heavyweight champion. You can't keep both. So anyway, unfortunately, racial animosity among whites ran so deep that they needed a great white hope or a white boxing legend to take away one from Jack Johnson. He was covered more in the press than all the other black men combined, of course. Anyway, it was huge and all that. So, anyway, that's what happened with that. In 1910, former champion James Jeffries came out of retirement to challenge Johnson, saying, I'm going to fight for the sole purpose that a white man's better than a Negro. James Jeffries would have to lose 100 pounds and not fight, to fight the fight, and he hadn't fought in 6 years and all that. Jeffries had no interest in the fight because he was quite happy as an alfalfa farmer. But pressure came and they signed an agreement. So anyway, it was a brutal one and all that. The fight odds prefer Jeffries, of course. Jeffries being a powerful boxer and all that. So it would take place on the 4th of July, 1910, in front of 20,000 people in Reno, Nevada. Jeffries tried to impose his will and all that, but Johnson dominated the fight. And Jeffries' corner threw in the towel to end the fight and prevent Jeffries from having knocking on his record. But anyway, it's still a stoppage and all that. So Johnson had done it and silenced the critics and all of that. Unfortunately, though, the fight did trigger race riots all across the United States in all four corners of the country. All that. Black Americans were jubilant and celebrated Johnson's great victory as a victory for racial advancement. So anyway, there would be riots in 25 states and 50 cities. 20 people were killed, hundreds more were injured. Anyway, the Jefferson-Jeffries fight film would receive a lot of public attention, but many states would ban the exhibition of that film because they didn't want Johnson's victory to take over the country and all that. Former President Theodore Roosevelt actually supported banning not just moving pictures of box matches, but a complete ban of all prize fights in the United States because of the crookedness and gambling and all of that. So anyway, Congress would ban distribution of prize fight films across state lines in 1912, and it was not allowed to, the ban was lifted in 1940. In 2005, the film of the Jeffries Johnson fight of the century was entered into the National Film Registry as worthy of preservation. The weird thing was that Jack Johnson, in his first 5 years of being the heavyweight champion, would not fight a black opponent. He would deny Joe Jeanette, Sam Langford, and Harry Wills that thing. So, anyway, the African American community was upset that Johnson would refuse to fight African American fighters. So, anyway, but Jack Johnson said, fine, I'll do it, against battling Jim Johnson, who he easily beat. All that. However, In April 1915, he lost his title to Jess Willard. Johnson was knocked out in the 26th round of the 45-round fight in front of 25,000 people in Havana. So, anyway, Johnson actually was tired after the 20th minute. And all of that. There were rumors that he took a dive, but Willard had it and all of that. Johnson would never fight for the heavyweight crowns after losing it. He could still continue fighting. He actually fought professionally until 1938. Anyway, he did a lot of things going and all that. He had a good boxing style. Unfortunately, his personal life would be the biggest problem of his legacy. His legacy was being the first black heavyweight boxing champion of the world, and also his legacy was showing America up in the time of racial segregation. However, his personal life bit them in the butt. He would enjoy the true life, like be flashy with his clothes and all that. You know, he would be flashy and all that. As a black man, he broke a taboo in consorting with white women and would verbally taunt men inside and outside the ring. Yeah, you know what that could be like. So he did what he could, all that. Anyway, Johnson was in various relationships, including 3 documentary marriages. All his wives were white and all of that. So anyway, he did have a few things and all that. He met Etta Duria, a Brooklyn socialite, at a car race in 1909. Anyway, they married January 18th, 1911. However, Johnson's abuse and infidelity would worsen her condition, and she had attempted suicide twice before finally succeeding. Johnson met a prostitute from Minneapolis who relocated to Chicago. They married December 1912 and would be together until 1924, when Lucille Cameron was the one, like the wife, filed for divorce because of his infidelity. Johnson would meet Irene Pinnell and would marry in 1925, and they were married until his death in 1946. Unfortunately, though, Johnson was arrested on the grounds that his relationship with Lucille Cameron violated the Mann Act against transporting women across state lines for immoral purposes because she was a prostitute. I mean, the case did fall apart because John Cameron refused to cooperate. However, Johnson was arrested again on similar charges and all that, and was convicted by an all-white jury. He was sentenced to a year and a day in prison. Johnson would skip bail and run towards Montreal before fleeing to France. They would live in exile in Europe, South America, and Mexico for the next 7 years. However, by July 1920, he did end up returning to the U.S. and surrendered to federal agents at the Mexican border. He would start serving his Mann Act sentence in September 1920 before being released in 1921, and the pardon was granted by Donald Trump on Jack Johnson in 2018. And all that. So, anyway, Jack Johnson's end would be June 10th, 1946, when he and a friend visited a segregation diner. And of course, Johnson drove away angrily after the diner refused to serve him. the car would collide with a telegraph pole and he would die of his injuries. He was only 68 years old and all that. He would be buried next to his first wife, Etta. Anyway, that's what happened. Anyway, so Jack Johnson fought 114 fights, winning 80 of them, 45 by KOs. He actually had the longest professional career of any world heavyweight champion, boxing for 33 years from 1897 to 1931 before Roy Jones Jr. broke it, and he's still boxing to this day. A lot of people said that Jack Johnson was a legend, and popular culture really gave him a lot because, of course, they did back in the old days. So, anyway, it was a great time to be Jack Johnson and how he basically made boxing popular in the U.S. despite his problems with the white guy. He was the one who told blacks you can do anything you want to do. And this is the 1910s when things were really bad for the African American race compared to the 2020s. There's still work to be done, but the fact of the matter is that Jack Johnson was a boxing champion, like it or not. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.